It was Halloween night in 1998, and the air was thick with excitement and a hint of mischief. My friends, Jess, Mark, and Lisa, decided to skip the typical trick-or-treating. We were 16, and that felt too juvenile. Instead, we wanted an adventure. "Let's check out the old Miller house," Jess suggested, her eyes gleaming with thrill. The stories we'd heard about it echoed in our minds, how it had been abandoned for years, haunted by the whispers of its tragic past. "Are you sure?" Mark asked, a note of apprehension in his voice. "They say people go missing there." "Come on, it's just a bunch of ghost stories," I scoffed, though a chill crept up my spine. With flashlights in hand, we made our way through the leaf-strewn streets, the crisp air nipping at our skin. The moon hung high, casting eerie shadows as we approached the decrepit house. Its peeling paint and broken windows loomed ominously against the starry sky. "Last one to the door is a chicken," Lisa yelled, sprinting ahead. I couldn't let her win. I followed her, Mark and Jess close behind. As we stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaked beneath our weight. Dust motes danced in our flashlight beams, and a musty smell enveloped us. The air felt heavy, as if the house itself was breathing. "Look at this," Jess exclaimed, pointing to an old family portrait hanging crookedly on the wall. The faces were faded, but their hollow eyes seemed to follow us. I shuddered. "Let's check the basement," Mark said, half joking. "That's where the real fun is." "Yeah, right," I replied, but the idea intrigued me. I wanted to prove I wasn't scared. We made our way to the basement door, the stairs leading down into darkness. The air grew colder as we descended, and the beam of my flashlight flickered ominously. "Do you hear that?" Lisa whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I strained to listen, but all I heard was the pounding of my heart. "Just the wind," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. Once at the bottom, we found ourselves in a damp, musty room lined with old, rusted tools and broken furniture. An oppressive silence hung over us. "Let's split up and explore," Mark suggested, a mischievous grin on his face. My stomach twisted at the idea. "We'll meet back here in 15 minutes. "Are you crazy?" Jess shot back, but there was a hint of excitement in her voice. We decided to stick together, but the darkness pressed in around us. As we rummaged through the debris, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow flitting just beyond the edge of my flashlight's beam. "Did you see that?" I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "See what?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowed. "Something moved," I insisted. We all froze, the atmosphere thick with tension. "Let's get out of here," Jess said, her voice trembling slightly. But before we could turn, a loud crash echoed from above us, sending a wave of terror crashing over us. "Run!" Mark shouted, and we bolted back toward the stairs, adrenaline surging. As we stumbled into the main floor, the front door slammed shut. The sound reverberated through the house, trapping us inside. We tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in. "Is someone playing a prank on us?" Lisa asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay together," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We huddled in a corner, our breaths coming fast and shallow. Suddenly, the temperature dropped and a low growl echoed from the shadows. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, primal and menacing. My heart raced as I shone my flashlight into the dark corners, but it only seemed to deepen the shadows. "Something's in here with us," Jess cried, her voice breaking. Without thinking, we dashed toward the back of the house, hoping to find a way out. The growling followed, getting closer with every frantic step. We burst into the kitchen where rotting food littered the floor. I grabbed a rusty knife from a drawer, my hands trembling. "Do you think it's a person?" Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. "Let's just find a window," I urged, but before we could move, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, gaunt silhouette with hollow eyes. It stood motionless, watching us. Fear seized me. We turned to run, but it lunged forward, knocking Mark to the ground. I could hear his terrified gasp as we scrambled out of the kitchen and into the living room. "Go! Go!" I screamed as we barreled towards a window. Jess was already climbing through, but it was too small for all of us. I glanced back just in time to see the figure reach for Mark. "Help!" he shouted, terror etched on his face. I didn't think. I pulled Lisa and Jess with me, forcing them to squeeze through the window. "I'll get him," I yelled, but they held me back. "We can't leave him," Jess cried, tears streaming down her face. Then we're all dead, I shouted back, my voice cracking. With a final glance back at the chaos, I saw Mark fighting against the figure, his eyes wide with fear. We climbed out into the cool night air, the weight of helplessness crashing down on us. Once outside, we ran until we were far from the house. We collapsed onto the grass, panting and shaking. Mark, Jess whispered, her voice filled with sorrow. We have to go back, Lisa insisted, but deep down I knew we couldn't. The shadows of that night would haunt us forever. The darkness swallowed the Miller house, but it had taken a piece of us with it. We may have escaped, but we'd never truly be freed from what lingered inside those walls.